profanity toward me.
What I'm doing is I'm asking you questions. What I'm doing is
You understand me?
listen, we need to get something straight right here, right? We're in an interview right now, right? And so I'm going to ask you questions and you answer them. All this other stuff that you got to say.
Best of my ability.
All right. So you're telling me that you have no training in the last 30 years.
That is not what I said.
All right. So I asked you if you had training and you said just basic.
That is not what I said. I said I've had updates also.
What are those?
Updates.
On
new
yes.
Trends, new things that come out.
On what?
On updates and new things that come out.
And what are those?
I don't remember specifically what those are.
So how do we find out? Do we go through your emails? Do I have to get all your emails and your company phone? Anyways, look at. So you don't have no certificates?
Are you asking if I have certificates pertaining to First Amendment training?
Anything. I'm asking you if you have certificates.
I have a training file, yes.
Okay, and what is it?
Do you expect me to?
Yes, I do.
30 years of training material?
Yes, because because you have.
I can't do that. That's why that stuff is in the training file.
So what you're not going to tell me your certificates? You're not going to tell me any of your training? Are you going to tell me anything? What?
I have lots of certifications.
All right. Have you had certifications in First Amendment? Have you had certifications in First Amendment? And don't lie to me and don't say I don't know, because I'm going to find out and hold you accountable for it. Speak the truth.
Gonzalez?
Do you have certificates or do you have certificates and training in First Amendment?
You are being hostile with me, and I have warned you that if that becomes the case.
No, this isn't hostile. This is saying you gotta talk. You gotta fucking answer my questions. This is my interview. Listen, hold on. Before you start running your mouth, this is my interview. This is my interview, and I determine what questions I ask you. All right, because it's exculpatory to my case.
Profanity with me, and I suggested to you that you don't do that. I would end this interview.
Nobody gave you profanity. All right, so what are your work hours? What are your work hours? What are your work hours?
5:30 in the morning until 3:30 in the afternoon.
What days?
Monday through Thursday.
All right. What shift do you work?
I just told you what shift I worked.
Was that A, B, or C?
We don't have A, B, or C shifts, Mr. Gonzalez.
All right, so what do you call them?
Day shift.
There you go. All right, so what's your email address?
You have my email address.
I do not have your email address.
That's funny because you've been communicating with me by way of email.
That's not your email.
That is my email.
All right, what's your company's cell phone number?
I am not going to divulge that to you right now.
Why isn't it public? Is it a private company cell phone number you have?
No, but just given your track history, I don't want you blowing up my phone.
Oh, God.
How did you get that track history? By the prosecutor ignoring your calls and to find out who he is?
God, what, you think I like you or something? You think I like talking to you or that I miss
Do you
you?
have any further questions for me?
I don't answer your questions. Just sit there and be quiet.
Gonzalez, if you don't have any further questions for me, I'm going to end.
Do you think I don't have further questions for you, sir?
And I suggest you ask them.
Or what?
Or I will end this interview.
Then we'll just get another one. What, you think you're going to be able to hide one, Grad? You're the biggest, who's my victim? Who's the victim I have?
Gonzalez,
Who's my victim?
Tucson City Court.
Got him. Fucking got him.
Did Tucson City Court write a victim statement?
I don't need one.
Why would you not need one, huh?
Oh, you don't need one? Are you the victim or is Tucson City Court the victim?
Just told you, Mr. Gonzalez.
All right. When was the Tucson City Court born?
Excuse me?
When was the Tucson City Court born?
Businesses typically don't have birthdays.
Oh,
Keep going.
but businesses could easily be a victim of a crime?
Yes.
Of recording?
Wow.
Yes.
Of recording?
So you're admitting that you recorded?
Hook, line, and sinker.
No, that's what you arrested me for.
It sounded like you just admitted you recorded.
Do you have any disciplinaries?
Of course I do.
Okay, let's start over. When he said yes, right before you said recording, you said, do businesses...
Businesses could usually be a victim of a crime.
Yes.
And the cop's right. A victim of crime can be a business, right? And businesses can be the victim of a crime in very rare cases, not usually, like he said, but it's an ARS for it, and it's this one. Just a quick example, like a pawn shop. Somebody robs a pawn shop. The pawn shop is the victim of that financial loss, which is an actual crime. But anyway, carry on.
These are the questions, whether you like them or not. Listen, here's the thing. Look at you don't get to decide what questions I ask you. You have to answer these questions. These are exculpatory to my case. I need to know if you're competent to stand trial. I need to know if you're competent to stand trial.
To this investigation. So if you have some more questions that are germane to this investigation, please ask them.
All right. Are you on the Brady list?
Game, set, and match. Fuck yeah, dude.
Are you on the Brady list?
Not that I know of.
How many disciplinaries would you say you have?
Mr. Gonzalez, do you have any questions about the
That is. This is a question. This is the question. Listen, the crimes that you committed, listen, this is my case.
incident that occurred on November 8th?
Yes, and I'm getting to that, but I need to know if you could stand trial. When was the last time you had a mental health evaluation? When was the last time you had a mental health evaluation?
Mr. Gonzalez, I'm going to end this investigation. I'm going to end.
End the investigation? Wow. That's hilarious. Okay, so let me explain everything that just happened right now. So that just tells you right there that the prosecutor is using the interview process, the pre-trial interview process, as a way to coerce a confession out of a pro se litigant, right? So, dude, okay, check it out. So, under the statutes for a building being a victim, like a pawn shop or whatever, these are the limited rights that they have. Right off the rip, you're like, man, I'm fucked. But if you read closely, number one, the definition of victim is in section 134401, shall be afforded the following rights. So, assuming they meet the criteria of a victim, which is person against whom the criminal offense has been committed, meaning if you're found guilty. And if you look at the highlighted parts of the limited rights of a legal entity, it'll start to show you that check it out. That indeed the only time they have any rights is during sentencing or anything that has to do with restitution, getting paid back. So the only reason a legal entity, and it says in every single one of these, legal entity committing a criminal offense against the legal entity, and it all has to do with restitution or sentencing, right? All four of them. And a lawful representative for the entity shall have the right to be present or heard in any proceedings related to sentencing or restitution of the person convicted of the criminal offense, right? Okay, here's the big fucking problem with that. Just remember the pawn shop thing, right? With the pawn shop, it makes sense because if you break into a pawn shop and steal a guitar, the person who sold it isn't really hurt, you know what I mean? And the pawn shop is a business, so it makes sense that during restitution that they would have a say in how much that certain thing is. You know what I mean? Because it's a business, right? Okay, and legal entity is what confuses people. Now remember, these are the same people that brought up, in Lane Myers' case, brought up Brown v. State for YouTube videos.
Harassment and conduct, not speech. I have copies of Arizona Court of Appeals cases, State v. Brown from 2004.
Again, super huge problem with that. YouTube wasn't even a thing because it was founded in 2005. So remember, whenever the court says legal entity, and everybody else assumes that means something legal. Like, the court legal is legal. No, that's not what it means. A court is an institution with the authority to adjudicate legal disputes. While a court can be the subject of a lawsuit, it is generally acting as a governmental body and not a separate legal entity, right? A court is an institution, often a government entity, right? And then here's the whatever. While a court can be sued for misconduct and other legal issues, it cannot. Basically, they can't be a victim if they don't have anything to lose. And they don't have anything to lose is because they are a governmental arm. You know what I'm saying? Okay, but herein lies the issue. And this is why they hide the prosecutor, because once the prosecutor has initiated judicial action or whatever, or started the, first appearance / arraignment, then they have basically said that their investigation is complete and they're going to go off. If the cops come up with anything, fine, whatever, but it's no longer being investigated because they have enough to convict you at arraignment. That's basically what, you know what I mean? That's basically what the whole thing is, which is why, and then in due time, they will, give you all the information and whatnot. But this is why they hide the prosecutor in the beginning, is so they can build up those phone calls because you're trying to get a hold of who the prosecutor is, and the courts are covering for them. Now, think about this, though. A prosecutor cannot use the court for profit, right? And they can't use the court for another helping of their investigative process. But if the court allows itself to be a victim, okay, check this out. This would be a really easy way to understand it. If it was the pawn shop, how would the pawn shop go about getting its restitution other than being convicted? You know what I mean? Other than your conviction, right? How would they go about that process? And who decides that, right? Shouldn't the court decide that? Well, if the court is also the one claiming victimhood, right? But in your case, it's even crazier because recording is not illegal, right? Even though that now the court doesn't make laws, right? The Congress makes laws. There's judicial, executive, and then people who make laws. There's a reason that 122H exists, is because there has to be, if filming is a First Amendment right, and there's no law that prohibits it, right? The Supreme Court has to let at least one little part of it be non-negotiable to the judges, right? So, but it says, unless otherwise prohibited, being left up to the local rule or whatever. Now, if a judge or a court decides to prohibit that last little bit of it that makes it legal, then they are subject to its repercussions, right? But they can't make it illegal and then claim a crime and then be a victim of it. They can't prohibit something and then be victimized whenever its prohibition is, you know what I mean? Whenever somebody follows the actual law and not their prohibition, right? You ever heard of a crime victim advocate? These are paid victims, right? To represent people. A court isn't supposed to profit off crime. And since they're a legal, whatever, they're considering themselves a legal entity, then they have access to this. And these people, right? Guess who decides what these people, or who or and why they're implemented, right? Appointed by the courts. So a lawful representative of a victim or designated by the victim or appointed by the courts, right? But if the victim is the court and the court is the one who made the law that made it a crime, that made themselves a crime victim that they decided, right? Now they have access to, now they have a way to profit off of this. And who decides who gets the victim compensation programs, right? Who decides that? Well, That goes through the county attorney's office, right? The same people that are prosecuting you. Crime scene cleanup. I mean, dude, if you've been a victim of crime, there may be assistance available in your community. Arizona provides financial assistance to the victims of crime, out-of-pocket expenses incurred as a direct result of crime. Victim compensation may help out of pocket expenses, including medical costs, funeral expenses, mental health counseling, wage loss, transportation costs, and crime scene cleanup. Contact your local attorney's office for an application, right? Training for paid or volunteer staff of agencies who provide services directly benefiting victims and produce educational or outreach materials describing the services available to obtain whatever. Anyways, okay. So okay, now it says for more information, click here. And before I click here and you see what's on the other side of that click, just remember that, check this out. So the court can be the victim and create the law that made them the victim. And on top of awarding the criminal case and civil case actual damages for whatever the crime they created that they made themselves a victim of, but they can also give you punitive damages, which are a punishment, right? So just remember that. And the maximum payout is $100,000 to victims. And 72 hours after it's reported to law enforcement, you can start collecting. Okay, now let's see what's on the other side of that click. So I clicked for more info. All right, right here. For an application. Let's see, where do I get my application? Well, la-ti-da. 32 North Stone Avenue, 14th floor, Tucson, Arizona. Right? What the fuck, dude? And so check this out. So if they're the people that you call to get the compensation, then what if they're the victim? Right? Right, so then I click on the website, right? It says click for the website. Well, here in a second. And of course, the first thing that happens is it doesn't come up. But then I try again. Scroll down a little bit. And oh, what do you know? A big old fat picture of a big old fat bitch and another big old fat bitch. Wow. All the way back to the fucking bitch. Anyways, too bad there's no precedent for any of this, and it's going to take years of appeals and people like Lane Myers and like you, Mr. Gonzalez, of suffering before anybody fucking puts it all together. But there you go. That's what's happening.